My little homage to the pecan pie or pecan pie is a pecan shortbread, dulce de leche, a blondie with pecans, and a topping of glazed pecans on top in dulce de leche. So shortbread, dulce de leche, blondie, dulce de leche, toasted pecans. Good times. To toasted pecan land we go. Let's weigh some up and chop some up roughly. It helps to chop these before you toast them just to make sure you get that toasted pecan flavor all the way through. If you do these whole, it'll just toast the outside and not the inside. You'll end up with kind of a raw nut flavor in whatever you're baking, so it's always good to chop them before roasting. 350 for 15 minutes. If you're anything like me, working with parchment paper can be pretty frustrating at times. Lo and behold, there is an easier way. I've talked about the crinkle method before. This one involves crinkling up your parchment paper, dipping it in water so that it hydrates the paper and softens it just for a second, and you wring it out, getting most of the water. A little bit's not going to be the end of the world. And then once you unfold it, you have a nice softened parchment paper that fits into the corners, doesn't have any wrinkles, doesn't look like pretty origami, but at the end of the day, I'm baking something. I'm not trying to create origami. And besides, if I was, I'd use a paper that wasn't insanely frustrating like parchment paper. Most pans are non-stick, slips all over the place. Why? Just dab off any excess water before using it, especially with something like our cardamom pecan shortbread. Gather your ingredients together. Cold butter is super important for a good shortbread. I see a lot of recipes that use soft butter and you cream it. I see those, I think sugar cookie. Into your stand mixer, add your flour, your sugar, your cardamom, your salt. Give it a mix to put them in a nice state of homogenization. Is that a word? Homogenization. Make it homogenized. Now we're gonna start adding our butter one at a time, just pulverizing this so it slowly starts forcing its way into the dry mix. Add your pecans at the end and you'll have a nice dry crumbly mix that's meant to be pressed into a form. It shouldn't come together into a dough. To stay super short, you want it to be crumbly and really dry. Once you press it in and bake it, that'll all come together. Into your 8x8 with your dry parchment paper, pour your crumbly shortbread mixture and begin to work it into the corners. That's the easiest part to mess up in this whole process, to be honest. Just try to get it as level as possible and head into the oven at 325 for 45 minutes or so. Now let's make some brown butter. Over a medium-high heat, melt a whole stick of butter. Start swirling it around as those milk solids toast to a nice dark golden brown. Pull it off the heat and let it come to room temp before using. This is for our blondies. The brown butter base, if anything, is always killer. Add your brown sugar and just kind of work that in until it starts to dissolve. It doesn't need to be perfect because it'll just melt anyways. Room temperature egg to prevent curdling. Have a whisk, bring it together. Yay, we're all playing nicely now. Look at that. Add a little bit of vanilla extract. Give it a bit of a whisk. Then your dry ingredients, salt and all-purpose flour to complete the ensemble. Fold it together with Mr. Spatula until it's a nice solid dough. Toasted pecans, please come and play. Mix it in. Think of it like, the pecans are kind of like when you fold in chocolate chips in a chocolate chip cookie dough. Blondie dough is basically the same dough as you would make for chocolate chip cookies, just with pure brown sugar instead of a mix of cane sugar and brown sugar. Call it by another name. There's lots of crossovers where it's tough to define it. It's a cookie that ends up being baked like a brownie and has killer caramelized flavors to boot. Good times in Blondie land. So you can totally make dulce de leche at home using sweetened condensed milk, either in an oven, on the stove top, or in a pressure cooker. I tried the oven method a couple times, but it has varying results and tends to take forever. The other two are quicker, but also involve the possibility of a can of hot sugary caramel dulce de leche exploding. So you really want to be careful letting those cool down and not jostling them. Another consideration is in the pressure cooker, taking the label off and making sure there's no adhesive still on it. Apparently the adhesive can actually gum up the valves in a pressure cooker and cause it to explode. So food for thought. It's a little easier if you want to just buy dulce de leche. If you have it, get it online. I got this at a shop down the road. You know, it's one of those things. You could spend several hours doing it and it's an experience. It was fun. I learned stuff. But at the end of the day, it's much easier to open a can. So yeah, choose for yourself. Boom. Can opener. Let's get this guy rolling. Sticky, sweet, lovely dulce de leche is a real treat. Has that tangy flavor that you'd never get from caramel, and it really changes the dish. I tried recipes like this with caramel. As soon as I started using dulce de leche, I knew it was the correct choice. So spoon about half of it over your shortbread mixture and make it as level as possible. A little bit sticky, but it spreads nicely. If you really want, sprinkle some salt on top. I kind of regretted not doing that in retrospect, and when I make this again, I will. Salted caramel, salted dulce de leche, awesome flavor that just pops. What a great combination. Use your hand spatula to take out your Blondie dough. It's just easier with your hands. I tried doing it with tools, but you know, it's just a stiffer dough. Almost the kind of thing you'd form into balls, so just press it in with your hands, make it as level as possible, and then spatula out the rest of your dulce de leche on top. It should be solid enough to spread around. If it isn't, just give it a chill for a minute to let it set up. But all the times I did it at room temperature, it was totally fine. So get those into the corners like a little brick maker using an offset spatula, and then with a pretty design in mind, lay your pecans, whatever you like. I did this kind of, I don't even know what to call it, some sort of geometric pattern. At 350 for 30 minutes, we're gonna bake these until they're nice and golden brown and the pecans have noticeably changed color but haven't burnt. Last stage is optional, but I like to do something like this. We're gonna do a gum Arabic syrup, water, turbinado or raw sugar into a small saucepan, along with some gum Arabic powder and some liquid glucose, which I forgot to film, but use your imagination. It's sticky. Bring it to a boil to melt the sugars down and start homogenizing it. Then blend it up to bring it into a nice syrup. Confectionery syrups like this make a lovely shiny coat for something like a nut topping. If it didn't have it, it would still look great, just a little bit more rustic. This is gonna add a nice sheen that will stay as gum Arabic makes a film and holds really well. This should demold in one solid piece, which makes it much easier to handle. That nice crisp shortbread base really adds a great texture to something like this. Or a brownie. I mean, if you have that crisp shortbread at the base, crunch into a softer filling is a really fun contrast. Cut these into manageable squares, not huge chunks. This is pretty decadent, you know.
Super indulgent, just like a pecan pie. All the layers play nicely together. I'm happy with how this turned out. Enjoy.